All right, guys, so I wanted to take a look at the Chicago Bears' current stadium situation with an update yesterday talking about the Bears maybe pivoting from the Arlington Heights location right now. And what I really want to talk about is all of those renderings that we saw back in 2022 when the former mayor of Chicago proposed possibly redoing Soldier Field, and I want to talk about why that looks and feels completely unrealistic. But first, you can see the Bears meeting with Naperville about plans for a new stadium. Bears say Arlington Heights no longer the singular focus. The Chicago Bears' goal of building the largest single development project in Illinois history, led by billions of dollars in private capital investment, and the jobs and economic benefits generated is at risk in Arlington Heights. That was a statement released Friday. The stadium-based project remains popular in Arlington Heights, Chicagoland, and the state. And then it later basically says there's a big problem with the tax value of the property Arlington Heights, which they did close on, and they were planning on tearing down the racetrack there. My personal opinion, just right off the bat, I still do think Arlington Heights is the favorite for the Chicago Bears' new stadium. It's about 25 miles from Chicago, and if you looked at the most recent renderings of it, it's about a $5 billion project that I would liken to like a campus, like a college campus. It is really big. And there's going to be a lot of development if that project ends up happening. But now they're talking to other places, Naperville possibly getting into the mix. Demolition has reportedly already begun on the Arlington Heights racetrack, which was previously owned by Churchill Downs last month. And even with this new troubling development, a team spokesperson says that this is still going on, so they are demolishing it. I do still think Arlington Heights is the number one option, but when it comes to all of those renderings that we saw, you can take a look at them. Looks like building 4 big kind of support beams on each side of the stadium and attaching a futuristic retractable roof to it. You can look at the interior of it. I think this idea of renovating Soldier Field again is completely ridiculous. And I say that because the interior in these renderings is exactly the same. You've got the massive wall of seating, just like back in 2003 during the renovation, they added that. That is a completely obsolete design. Why would you waste billions and billions of dollars? This was going to be like a $3 billion renovation. I mean, it's a literal rebuild. You're going to have to add support structures. You're adding a retractable roof that's translucent. You're adding a bunch of club sections as well. You're redesigning both of the end zone areas where the stands are. This was a huge possible project that always seemed like it had a very little chance of happening. And with this news coming out that the Bears are shifting their focus, I do think it's important to note the dialogue is not around rebuilding Soldier Field. It's looking at Naperville. It's looking at surrounding suburbs of Chicago and not about rebuilding Soldier Field. So I do expect the Bears, when they do get a new stadium, whenever that may be, 2028, 2029, it does seem like they are trying to move on the Arlington Heights site, even with the tax problems. They are still tearing down the racetrack, and we should get more clarity, I'm sure, in the coming months. There's the stadium district right there. When it comes to the Arlington Heights renderings, they did not give any type of real stadium design, which is very annoying. All it was like a shell of a stadium that you can see. And the only really big thing that we learned is it's a big mixed-use district, along with possibly a man-made lake or, river, whatever you want to call it, right in the front of the stadium with 2 bridges over top where people can enter. That was kind of the big thing that we saw from the Arlington Heights renderings. And then there was a bunch of, renderings of like people, I don't even know. It's like a mixed use district, whatever, tailgates, just boring stuff, honestly. But that is kind of the update on the Soldier Field Arlington Heights situation. I think with the news that just came out that they might be looking at other places, there is no talk of that Soldier Field rebuild happening. Lori Lightfoot, the mayor that proposed it, she's already out of office. She was not very popular in the Chicago area. So I think Arlington Heights is still number one when it comes to the Bears' new stadium. It will be. I do think they want to do a retractable roof. It is more expensive, but if they get enough private funding, I mean, this is the Chicago Bears. You would figure this is a situation kind of similar to the Dallas Cowboys. Whatever price it ends up being, whether it's $3 billion, $5 billion, whatever it is, it doesn't really, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but if they have the private financing, this is your stadium. You have to think, this is our home for the next 50 years. You're going to spend the money to make it nice and build it up. So I do think the Bears probably want a retractable roof. There's a lot of Bills players, not that it matters, but there's a lot of Bills players and people nowadays really want a dome. So minimum what the Bears will do, they could do something like US Bank, make it a fixed roof, but you're going to have a ton of windows, ton of natural light, maybe make it a completely translucent roof like SoFi Stadium, or they could go with a retractable roof like that Soldier Field design. The Soldier Field design just to me has zero chance of happening. There's no way you would have an interior looking like that. They've been wanting to leave that area forever, it feels like. And it seems like Arlington Heights, even with the issues, is still the number one option, but they may have to pivot depending on what happens. This reminds me of the Las Vegas possible A's situation with them relocating. They had an original site in Las Vegas on the Strip. It was bigger. It had more acres. The deal ended up falling through. They had to take the Tropicana site, and that is where they will very likely be building the new stadium if all of that legal stuff gets worked out. So a lot of this stuff, it's always in motion. It's always changing, and I do think the Arlington Heights location is still the number one option for the Bears because it has been talked about for so long. But I'm just looking at some of these renderings at that social space all the way up top. That's remarkable. That reminds me of the Sonic rings, the Seattle Supersonics, when they were trying to get an NBA team to come back in like 2014. They had this arena and they had these rings. And what they did is all around the entire upper of the stadium, like above the upper deck, they had these continuous rings, and it was just social space, social space, social space. Looks like there's 3 or 4 levels of suites, and then on top of that, there's a giant social space in this rendering, completely redesigning Soldier Field. The other side of it looks like they're keeping that same giant wall of seating, again, which I think would be completely counterintuitive. That doesn't make any sense. So that is the updated situation on Soldier Field. And then it is mentioned that the Bears cannot exit their lease at Soldier Field until 2026. The new stadium would not be ready until, I would say, based on where they are right now on the timeline, I would put a date if they want to fast track it around 2028 or 2029. I view the Bears stadium situation very similarly to the Commanders. I think both of them will be getting new stadiums around the same time. I would say anywhere from 2028 to 2030. And both of them will either be retractable or fixed. I would say Chicago's probably going to be retractable and the Commanders will be fixed, but that's just an early guess. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.